Live from the PIX 11 Social Media Center, she's got more than 30 years on the streets as an investigative reporter. Now, PIX 11's Mary Murphy takes you deep into the world of cold cases, terrorism, America's drug crisis, and more. These are the Mary Murphy Files.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us on PIX 11 Facebook Live. I'm Mary. I appreciate you being here tonight. You know, it's been kind of an upsetting week here in the city. At least 3 teenagers were hit by gunfire. One of them died. He was just buried yesterday. Another girl was outside school. She was hit in her shoulder. And it's something we really need to talk about. It's happening too much. And with me tonight is my guest, Nadine Sylvester. She is the founder of the Rohan Levy Foundation, and it's named after her 15-year-old son. We have a photo of Rohan. He was killed in 2017 on the street with his friends. It was a case of mistaken identity. The police say that gang members got out of a car and just started firing, and he was hit in the eye, I believe.
In his head.
He was hit in his head. He didn't die right away.
No, he was on life support until February 23rd, 2017.
And then you lost him, and you decided you had to do something in his name, right?
Something. We wanted to make sure that, Rohan wasn't the first young man to die from gun violence, but he is on a long line of young men who continue to be killed by gun violence, whether it's in their communities or by police. It's become an issue, so I wanted to make a difference. My family and I wanted to do something that was tangible, and so we started the scholarship just without having a nonprofit, just like we're going to invest in a young man to not only get to college, but to also graduate from college.
And your son, I believe, wanted to be an architect.
He did.
Yeah, and this happened in East Flatbush. You know, we have footage from a funeral that was held yesterday on Monday for Amir Griffin. He was killed in South Queens, and he loved basketball. He had made the junior varsity team at Cardozo High School, and there he is. He was 14 years old, and he was hit in the neck, and he was just practicing his beloved game outside and hit by stray gunfire that police think was connected to gang activity. So there he is in school, and there's the memorial. We've seen too many of these memorials.
Too many of these.
And it was by the Baisley Park houses in South Queens, and it's just happening way too much. And I know you're trying to make a difference, but one of my colleagues, Nicole Johnson, she spoke to the girl that had been shot near her high school, a charter school, and I want to play a little bit of that piece for our viewers.
At just 16 years old, Ashley Armagon knows what life or death really means. She has a bullet still lodged in her left shoulder. It's too close to a major artery to remove. The teenager was hit by a stray bullet outside of her high school Monday during dismissal.
That's when I heard the first gunshot, and I felt something hit me, but it wasn't hard. I heard another one. I turned to the corner, and then I pulled up my jacket because it was falling. Then I looked at my hand, I saw blood. Then I looked at my shoulder, and then I just saw the bullet. I just started screaming.
That shooting and the deadly shooting of 14-year-old Amir Griffin, police say, are a result of 2 rival teen gangs, and it's possible the same gun was used.
Kids just think these things are funny, and it's not. It's not a game. It's playing people's life.
Already, police arrested and charged a 16-year-old with attempted murder in Ashley's shooting, and 2 others for shooting on a city bus just an hour before.
3 individuals, 16, 16, and 17, all with multiple recent arrests for offenses including robbery and gun possession, when you look at the totality.
Police say these same teens are to blame for a spike in shootings in the area, up 67%. And while recovering, Ashley tells us she's thinking about Amir Griffin's family.
I feel very sad for his family because I feel like he didn't deserve that.
He didn't deserve that. None of these children that are dying deserve this. But when you hear about the uptick in shootings, we have a very low murder rate in this city. We're like the safest big city in the nation, according to what we hear from City Hall. We're having a new police commissioner come in now. What do we have to focus on to make the young people safer?
I I get very upset when I hear that it's a safer city, because as we see, it's not safer for people of color, especially young men and young women, as we saw there. I can flash back to just last summer, the beginning of school, September and October, when Timmy was also playing basketball and was shot in Brownsville on the park, due to rival gang members. I think what needs to happen is there needs to be a pouring of resources in these communities. The community that Amir lived in, Erica Ford, who is of Life Camp, stated that the PAL wasn't open at 8 p.m. It should have been open so that the police athletic league, so that young people could have a safe place to play basketball during the evening hours. There needs to be job training programs, more money poured into those programs in our communities. There has to be a connection. The programs, after school programs that used to exist in our schools have been taken out. Where are young people supposed to go? When I was on the show a couple months ago, we talked about the many factors that have influenced this gun violence. Parents, it's not that parents are lacking to take care of their children. They're working 2-3 jobs. I live in Brooklyn. If rent is $2,000, and you are just making $15 an hour, you probably have to work 2 jobs just to pay your rent. Mm-hmm. That leaves your child unsupervised. There's not a safe place to go for after school, and so you see this issue happening over and over again.
So they have to play indoors? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think that should be fair. The American dream is the life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. Children should have that pursuit too. They should be able to play on the streets. They should be able to be safe. The other thing that needs to happen is federal legislation around gun regulation. So let's be clear, the guns that are coming into New York, they're coming from states that have legal rights to buy guns, right?
Even at gun shows, right?
Right, you can walk into a Walmart in Georgia and get guns. The guns that killed my son came from out of state. They were not, no one bought them at a gun show in New York. We do not. We have the strictest gun laws. We need to close down on the iron pipeline that is coming through to our city.
On the East Coast, a lot of it, right?
Especially on the East Coast.
Right. Now, also, when it comes to getting justice in these cases, you were fortunate, if you want to call it that there was an arrest made in your son's case. And then there was a big gang case that was announced this year in July. And it involved people that were, at least one of them was involved in your son's murder. So Jennifer Bisfrom, my colleague, was at the press conference announcing the arrest in that case. And some of this footage is disturbing to see.
It was very...
From firing gunshots out of a Brooklyn house into residential streets, and from a rooftop into buildings, to loading guns on the subway, Brooklyn's district attorney and some of NYPD's top cops say these 21 alleged gang members terrorized the streets of Brooklyn with drugs, guns, and gang crimes, and are even connected to 2 murders, including a 15-year-old Rohan Levy, an innocent bystander who was killed back in 2017.
There was a group of young gang members who were ready, willing, and able to use firearms to attack rival gang members.
District Attorney Eric Gonzalez said many of the suspects from Operation One Nation are part of the Folk Nation street gang. The group is part of a 65-count indictment.
There is no mystery here. It's gangs and it's guns, and it's a deadly combination.
The gang takedown was part of a nearly 3-year-long investigation. Investigators say as they continue to work to end senseless gang violence, some of the most dangerous people in Brooklyn are now off the streets.
I believe that this takedown will have a measurable impact on safety in the communities of Flatbush, East Flatbush, and Canarsie.
Now, that was a major takedown. And what struck me when I read the press release was there was a father and 2 sons among the people that were arrested. And you said one of the sons, was it his car that was used, the tan car, in your son's murder?
The father's car was used in my son's murder.
And that was on the wanted poster. And I think we have a picture of the tan car when that poster was first put out before the arrest was made. There it is. That was a 4-door sedan. And just to think that a father is sort of making his car available and then a 15-year-old gets shot dead because of this cruising around by gangs, it's just mind-boggling. It's multi-generational.
I'm a little emotional because I know these people. I know them personally. They've come from the same community I come from.
Were they family friends?
they were family friends, yes. And so it hurts to know that, I have been a resource for my community, and that my son has become a victim of gun violence to the very community that I have served for quite some time.
I mean, you have a master's in social work, and you do everything to uplift your community and young people.
I specifically do that because I believe in my community. So it really hurts to see that this was the outcome for this.
Yeah. I'm reading some comments that we received from viewers. Latricia Adams wrote, "My deepest condolences. I know the pain too well. My 23-year-old son was murdered July 14th, 2018. Half my heart and soul died with him."
That is the sentiment of most of the mothers. I am part of a mother support group, mothers who have lost their children to violence. It's a wound that never heals. People say you will get better with time, or in my case, you have other children, but it doesn't get better with time. It doesn't matter that you have other children. That's like saying, well, you have one hand, so you should be okay. It's really hard to go on. As this year, Rohan should have been graduating from high school. He did not, right? He did not go on to college, and I have a brother who's almost the same age as Rohan, and he is not, my brother is driving a car, and I often wonder what it would be like if my son were here, and, I would be having him drive me around.
Right.
And I miss those moments. And then while I am fortunate that we have made an arrest in this case, this is not over. We haven't gone to trial yet, and there are lots of things that are happening in the community around just this arrest that could negatively impact my life. So it's a pretty hard place to be in. The other thing that I worry about is that there in my community, I should say, I don't want to say our community, in my community, there is a fear of talking about what's happening in our community, this fear of snitching, and I think there needs to be a cultural shift because people are getting hurt. When young people know of people who have guns or who has access to guns, and they often will not tell other people, like adults, responsible adults, that such and such has a gun, which creates this kind of what you're seeing now on the ground. The young man that shot Timmy in Brownsville was 14. Amir, who was shot last week, was shot by another 16-year-old. Like, where are they getting these guns from?
Right. Another viewer is writing, Marisol Goico Moya, "This is so sad. These kids are our future presidents, our future mayors, etc. This is so sad that these very young kids cannot have the life that we had when we were their age." Do you remember a better life when you were younger?
Yeah, I grew up in the 80s. It wasn't gun violence then. It was the crack epidemic and the rise of HIV/AIDS. But it didn't impact children as much. Yes, I'm misspeaking because crack did devastate families.
Within the household, yes.
In the household. You
But
did have families that were
it was
separated.
emotional damage a lot of the time, and physical abuse, I'm sure, but not gunfire that's going to cut you down within a second.
Right, you didn't have a fear of going outside.
You didn't, yes, exactly.
Which is different. Like my safety as a person walking was not impacted. My family unit may be disturbed, but like physically, I did not feel that I could be killed by someone walking on the street.
Like going
when
outside.
I do the Rohan Levy Foundation, we provide scholarships. We are launching a new program with the God Squad, which is 67 precinct clergy, called the Flatbush Leadership Academy, to talk to young men. And oftentimes, what I hear from them is, "I'm not going to live to see 18, so this doesn't matter."
Oh,
They are
have that
living
sort
in
of-
fear all the time that they're not going to make it past a certain age because they've witnessed their friends die, their cousins die. Tomorrow I'm going to be with New York City Together, working with a group. They've seen people close to them. A few weeks ago, we were at the National Day of Remembrance on the Capitol lawn, and the young people from Chicago, all young men I was sitting with, we were like waiting on the lawn, taking some shade, and I decided to speak to them. And it was the same story, this hopelessness. Like there's no understanding of that tomorrow I have opportunities. Like, this is not the only thing for me.
Well, you're trying to provide the opportunities. I want to show footage from the foundation dinner, your first dinner, your first gala
Our
for
first
the
gala.
Rohan Levy Foundation. And other moms like you who have lost their sons or their daughters were there. A lot of sons lost, right? And
Young
and
men.
McGee Hickey was there reporting for us, and there are some of the other young
And
lives
Akil.
lost. Yeah, Akil, I know his mom. She was here on the show once.
Still unsolved, and there were so many witnesses and no one has come forward, which is even further complicating the grief that we feel as parents when you lose a child. To have it just not understand why it took place is even worse.
And you had our public advocate there, Jamani Williams, and he made reference to the fact that there's a lot of attention these days to the whole vaping issue, and we need to pay attention to this. And here's what he had to say about that.
I've heard the president and others talk about vaping, but 40,000 people are going to die from gun violence this year alone. It's 40,000. 9,000 will be shot. I've had no mention of that in the White House.
Because even with all the mass shootings, we really haven't tightened up on a lot of these gun laws, especially with the assault weapons.
And we've moved really quickly to enact regulations around vaping. Like, we've already done so much that Juul is going out of business practically.
Yeah.
And yet still we have mass shootings happening. We had a mass shooting happen on Halloween. We had one happen down the block in Crown Heights. We had one happen in Brownsville. Like, how many more people must die for us to act? And there is, I understand that by no means I'm like anti-gun. There is a safe way to do this.
And just to give us a sense of hope now as we wrap up this evening and show another picture of your son, Rohan, what are your hopes in terms of the foundation and what it can do for young people?
The first thing that we would like to do in the foundation is, of course, support young men heading on to college, majoring in architecture and engineering. We currently have 3 scholars that we support. We will support them from the beginning of their college careers until the end. And what that means is that we provide financial scholarships for them. We will help them secure internships over the summer so that they can definitely hone in on their skills so that they'll be market ready at the end of their 4 to 5 years of college education. The other thing is that we would like to work with the community, with young men specifically, to talk about what's happening in their community, get them engaged, really create a space just for young men. And then the third thing is to mobilize our community around gun violence, whether that's legislation. Today is vote, right?
We're voting,
Getting
yeah.
people to go out to vote, because that's an important part of this puzzle, is that we must hold our legislators, elect them and hold them accountable to make sure that they're enacting things that really impact our lives on a daily basis.
Well, you impact us, Nadine Sylvester. You inspire us, and we thank you for all that you're doing. You're going to make a difference with your son's foundation.
Well, thank
And
you.
we'll make sure that we put online how people can find out more about the Rohan Levy Foundation. Nadine Sylvester, thank you for being with us tonight.
you, Mary.
And I thank our viewers for joining us once again, and I hope you'll share this, what I feel was a very important show. And you're such a great advocate for the young people. And I thank you
They are
for
the
all.
future.
I thank you for what you're doing.
Thank
And
you,
I
Mary.
wish many blessings. So I hope you'll be back next week, and I thank you for joining us. Have a good night.